violation.
Merging Matters, the Commonwealth People's Assembly's daily from the Cascadia, November the 23rd to the 25th, 2009, exclusively on Gaia the Channel, partnering for a more equitable and sustainable future.
In the second golden thread, you called for social justice and human rights. You emphasized the right to education, to health care and equal rights for women and vulnerable groups and decent work. Without these, every Millennium Development Goal, every pledge of debt relief and increase in development spending is undermined.
Welcome back to Merging Matters, and here we are at the Commonwealth People's Forum. Things are really heating up, and we are going to have the pleasure of the company of Mandeep out of the Civicus, and again going to feature on human rights, and there's some specificities that we really want to talk to about him. Welcome to Gaia the Channel.
Thank you very much.
Burning issues that are coming up. You are, in fact, based in South Africa, but of Indian descent. One of the speakers today spoke of the scenario with apartheid and so on. What are the legacies of apartheid that are existing still in South Africa?
In South Africa, I think South Africa, while political apartheid has been dismantled, economic apartheid in South Africa still exists. And a very famous South African modern thinker has said, while wealth has been deracialized in South Africa, poverty has not been deracialized. So the majority of poor people still belong to those communities that were that were actually exploited during apartheid.
What about the whole question of xenophobia and so on that's going on there? You know?
Of course, I mean, in South Africa, xenophobia always is a big issue, and I think it's again, it comes down to communities where people are less privileged, where they have to fight for resources, and unfortunately that turns into the local population looking at people who come from other African countries, them actually targeting them. But whereas the issue is about bad governance, the issue is about inequitable distribution of resources. But it's a really sad and unfortunate part of South African modern history, because the people of South Africa, the anti-apartheid activists, were actually given refuge in many of these African countries. And now citizens of those African countries that hosted these anti-apartheid activists, so graciously hosted them, are now being targeted in South Africa. So it is a really tragic and ironic issue.
So maybe you can give me a heads up on the whole scenario with the Gambia.
I work for Civicus, World Alliance for Citizen Participation. Civicus is an international movement of civil society, and we look at countries where civil society space is restricted. Now, Gambia is a Commonwealth country. The Commonwealth is premised on the values of human rights and democracy, and as it is a responsibility of every Commonwealth country to protect human rights defenders, people who speak up, who take up causes on behalf of human rights. It's a very unfortunate situation that the head of government in the Gambia has actually said that he will kill human rights defenders because they exercise democratic dissent. They challenge the government on its policies. And the right to democratic dissent is an essential human right, and civil society discharges an extremely important role by holding the government to account. And it is really unfortunate that a member of a grouping that prioritizes human rights in all its exhortations, in all its documents, has gone on record to instill fear in the minds of human rights defenders.
So has Civicus got a solution to this situation?
I think one, of course, it's not just Gambia. The Commonwealth is a 53-member grouping, and it's a number of countries. I mean, of course, in Gambia, somebody has said something, and of course they've done something. But in other countries, maybe heads of government don't say it, but they do it. In my own country, in India, human rights defenders have been targeted. They have been called anti-national. They have had to face trumped-up charges. In fact, one of the most prominent human rights defenders in my country was actually charged under anti-terrorist legislation. A man who publicly and privately abjured violence was actually charged for inciting violence under an anti-terrorist law. So I mean, the issue is, of course, there's Gambia, there's India, there's countries like Malaysia and Singapore, where people can't exercise their right of democratic dissent. If they come out on the streets to protest, one, they're not given permission in the first place, and secondly, when they protest, they are beaten up. They are brutally beaten up by law enforcement agencies. So this runs across. I mean, even in a country where, like the UK, which you say a more mature democracy, around Parliament House, within a 1 kilometer radius, you cannot protest. So it's not alone just a few countries, but across the Commonwealth, we are seeing these incidents, and they reflect very badly on the Commonwealth, in the sense the Commonwealth claims to prioritize human rights. So by that definition, by that understanding, the Commonwealth countries should have higher standards. They should have higher standards of compliance with human rights standards. They should be more sensitive to human rights issues. But the truth is, they are not.
But in the spirit of the Commonwealth and civil society, maybe there is a solution. That's what I was wondering, whether Civicus could offer some of the positive ways of addressing these matters.
I think the solution is to move from rhetoric to action. It's time our heads of government who are coming here put their money where their mouth is. They must make proper mechanisms where they judge their peers. And in fact, I've been at the Human Rights Assembly, and there have been some really interesting ideas that have come out, and I will discuss some of these with you now. One is, there's the Commonwealth Ministerial Action Group. Now, this is the body which is charged at the highest level with defending human rights. And in the past, it has taken action on Zimbabwe. It has taken action when Pakistan, there was an undemocratic coup in Pakistan. Coups are, of course, undemocratic. But the mandate of the Commonwealth Ministerial Action Group needs to be expanded. Secondly, there needs to be a complaints mechanism where ordinary citizens, where NGOs, where other interested organizations can actually register a complaint against a government in the Commonwealth that is not fulfilling its human rights commitments, that is not upholding the values of the Commonwealth. So that needs to come into space. And the third very interesting idea that emerged from the Human Rights Assembly was to have a process where the human rights record of every Commonwealth country is monitored at periodic intervals. Maybe at every Commonwealth heads of government meet, every country must come there, must explain what it has done to protect human rights. And of course, you have a country report, but then you also must have civil society to actually monitor how many countries are actually honestly explaining what they have done to protect human rights. So these three issues come up, and if Commonwealth heads of government do take these into account, we can have much better human rights protection, we can have a much better quality of life for Commonwealth citizens.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.